So this morning I opened the paper, Hasita, and it really got me thinking, why is everyone trying to bring me food and groceries faster and faster and faster than I can either eat it or cook it? What's really happening here? I mean, they used to sell books, fine, you added other stuff, and now suddenly Amazon food. Flipkart, hey, you guys are good at clothes and shoes. Just stick to that. No, Flipkart food. You remember Uber Eats? Just the thought of some guy picking up food, keeping it in that back seat, which was never really too clean, and then bringing it to me to eat. Not happening. So it quietly slipped into the Zomato brand. Is there something that is triggering all of this crazy chase towards getting bigger and bigger, in a way wider and wider, trying to just do more and more, right? I kind of miss that good old Casey Das, where just that one Son Papdi was what they were so good at and continue to be good at. Like, do one thing really well, guys. It makes me wonder, is there such a thing as too much growth?
Welcome to the Damn Good Marketing Podcast. Today, Subha and I discuss growth in all its multifaceted glory. How much is too much growth? On a daily basis, can a small business actually ever stop thinking about growing?
You're right. As a small business, I really can't stop thinking about growth. Sometimes I'd love to pace it so much better. Just slow down, do really good work with the few projects that I have in hand. But then there's this reminder that, hey, if you're not pitching today, if there's no funnel, if there's no pipeline, then what are you going to be doing 6 months from now or a year from now? So growth is always in the back of your mind or right in front of you. And it's a tough call to make.
Yeah, especially for a small business owner, I think it definitely is. Because a lot of systems that organically generate growth are not yet in place, right? There's a lot of active pitching. There's a lot of personal. In fact, Subha, you know this. Every time a project comes up, you have to start from scratch. There are no templates as such, right? However, once you grow and you become a larger organization, obviously there are systems there. There's a template for everything that makes it possible to grow. And when you don't have that, do you really have the choice to not do it at some point? Like, for example, I say next 2 months I will not pitch. I know that it's going to come back and bite me 6 months from now, right?
Yeah, true. No, but that got me thinking. Quite a few startups that I'm meeting and working with today, they have a head of growth. And I've been very tempted to ask, what does this really mean? I mean, is that just another fancy new name for marketing?
That's actually a very interesting question, because I think that the role of a head of growth changes based on the size of the organization and where they're selling and what they're selling and all of those things. In an early stage context, a lot of times it's actually the CEO or the CTO or one of the chief executives who ends up becoming the head of growth as well, because you have to advocate for your own product. Like, for example, the CMO of Boat is also the co-founder. Right. So it's not optional for him. He's just taken his skill set and he said, hey, I'm selling speakers and I'm selling sound systems from today. Right. In larger organizations, and especially I think even before that in growing organizations, the head of growth has a very different and I feel a slightly more complex role to play as well. Because what is growth, right? Is it only marketing? Can the promises made by marketing and sales alone translate into a good product or a service experience? No. Right. So there has to be a good product. There have to be good operations. And in a way, the head of growth is kind of, in control of all of these things. So is it a marketing function? Yes, because at the end of the day, you're responsible for the revenue. However, is that the only thing that you're focusing on? Not so much. It's like the BD head, right? Like fundamentally, we understand business development to mean sales. But it's not. It's business development, right? So I think head of growth is something similar as well. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's making a little more sense. So if we get a little logical about it, saying that, okay, head of growth / marketing / BD is really trying to enhance the business in a way that it can also continue to serve its customers in the right way. What would be step one to putting all this in place?
Yeah, yeah. So, in a way, particularly if you're a small business, and this is where I think a lot of the conversation around growth happens also. Because again, larger systems, while they have the ability to pitch, they also have the ability on some level to be resilient and deliver on what they're pitching. So, for them, 12 projects versus 10 is not going to make a lot of difference. But for smaller systems, it is, right? So, I think the first question to ask yourself is how much of this market can I really service? Right, and where is my unique value proposition? So of course, we marketers, we love jargon, we love terms, so we call it TAM, total addressable market, right? And it's a very interesting concept, because the number of meetings in which I've sat and I've asked them, what is your market size, what is your revenue target, and they've said literally everybody is our market. It's stunning, because the fact is that everybody cannot be your market. Even if you're selling something as common as Bata shoes, your specific market is still probably, at least like 20 years ago, it was school children, right? Everything else was secondary. So your TAM in that sense can simply be calculated. Just take the whole market size, estimate how many people are there who you can directly service, and divide it by the number of similar players in the market. So, for example, if I run a marketing agency, then I would take any business that needs a marketing consulting service, and not just any marketing service, but specifically a consulting service, which means that they want the strategy to be built, and they want, someone to spend time thinking about what is the right thing for them. I would take businesses of that nature. I would see how much revenue I can make from businesses of that nature. And I would divide it by me plus how many ever competitors I think exist in that space. Now, competition can be, graded based on price points. It can be graded based on service. So again, going back to my example, I would probably pick people who offer a similar price point, and also people who've retained their clients in the past for at least 2 or 3 years, because that's how we work. Right. So the simple calculation is basically how many people exist divided by how many people can help those people. So that's TAM.
Got it. Sometimes I wonder, like if I walk down to my neighborhood, Chandu's Kirana store, and I ask him, have you thought about your total addressable market and how do you project for the next 5 years? And he's just
going to ignore you.
Yeah, no, and why? Because he's just too busy making money and selling his goods.
Exactly.
And, getting bigger and bigger each day with just a lot of common sense in his head.
Exactly. In fact, that's fundamentally what it comes down to as well. The reason why we are even having these conversations is because of the sheer competition in the market today. So the moment there are 30 shoe sellers, 40 shoe sellers, all doing something similar, and we think there is a USP, but there actually isn't, right? At the end of the day, it's a shoe. It has to last long and it has to not bite my feet. That's what it comes down to. So, which actually brings me to the second bit, which is how much of this market can I address today? Say, based on my earlier calculation, I come up with a number that says there are 100 clients in Bangalore who I can address with my services. People who will at least listen, give me a seat at the table. And, if I follow my pitching process, I'll probably get that project. So that's my qualification parameter. But can I address 100 today? And this is where our growth falters a little bit, right? Because we either think we can, and we end up making the mistake of, we are in the service industry. So the only way to serve people is to hire more people. Yeah. Right. So we then make the mistake of hiring too quickly, and then the culture starts to crumble a little bit. And, everybody is responsible for things that they don't really understand or are not ready for yet. Or the other thing that happens, which is equally problematic, is that we pitch ourselves too low, in the sense that we say, no, today I can address only 2 clients. But the fact is that the actual reality lies somewhere between these 2 numbers. Obviously, you can't do all 100. At the same time, you don't have to settle for a 2 as well.
Got it. So I think the step 1 comes to something that we keep going back to, just really knowing who your customer is, right? Knowing whom you want to serve. And then step 2 is, okay, what can I do for these guys? And how many of these guys can I truly serve, where I add value? I do a good job. I do what I want to do, or I promise that I will do, right? So, exactly. So what happens at scale? Like at some point, how do we scale, and how do we Because we know that if we've got our TAM right, then we know that there's more out there for us.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I think that's a very individual choice that needs to be made. I'll also like to talk about the fact that there is a qualitative element to this delivery. It's not a packet of chips in most cases. It's not, a bottle of Coke. It is something a lot more abstract, both in the customer's mind and yours as well. Because for them, you picking up the call during the weekday is a sign that they can depend on you, right? Likewise, them opening up and asking you certain vulnerable questions is a way of telling you that, hey, I trust you to show me what's the right thing for me, right? So to be honest, I think most of us actually need a lot less scale than we think we do. While the attraction of the market itself, and I think that's a whole different conversation, just the fact that 100 exist and I want to be able to service all of them is very much there. Especially if you're a growing business, I think you need to get that fundamental right in terms of not just the quantitative aspect of your service offering or even your product for that matter, but also the qualitative aspect. Like, just to take an example, I finally fell for one of the many Instagram ads and bought leggings from Bliss Club. Now, literally, the reason I bought them is because they have pockets. I kid you not. Like, why do women's clothes not have pockets? I will never understand. Right? Finally, I saw a pair of, activewear pants that had pockets, and I fell for it, and I paid a good $2,000. Now, the thing that happened is, as soon as it was delivered, I wore it once, and the zipper at the back gave way. It stopped closing. I was very disappointed because obviously I've spent a lot of money. I've been seeing this ad for such a long time.
Right.
And I got a message on WhatsApp saying, hey, just leave, feedback and we'll let you know if there's anything. So it was a very generic form, but thankfully they had a section where I could go out and say, hey, but my zipper broke and, I'm a little disappointed. They've shipped a different pair now for free. Now, how do you do this with 10,000, 100,000 people? You have to. It's not optional, right? Because that's the expectation that has been set now. Right. So then you need to think about how do you make systems around this? How do you ensure that even when you're selling a few lakh products every month, somebody is sitting and checking that form?
Yeah.
Or at least using a tool that can gather that data at scale and tell you, hey, these seem to be the 10 problem areas.
Yeah.
And that's what would matter to me. Yeah,
that's true. And also, I think, in the early days, you're getting genuine feedback. Like today, you're going to fill that form and say that the zipper's broken because it did break. Right?
Yeah.
Now, when you start getting bigger and bigger and you have thousands and thousands of orders, and there's always a bunch of smart cookies who figure out that, hey, if I say something's broken, I'll get one more.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So at some point, this stops making sense for you because not all of your then you have a huge quality control issue at your end.
Yeah.
And you find that, hey, when I ship them out, 1 in 200, I'm pulling out because of a faulty zipper. But like 20 in 200 are saying it's broken and I'm replacing it for free. So suddenly this is not making sense. Something is genuinely broken.
Yeah, not just the zipper. I had an opportunity to work with a client in the retail SaaS space, and he used to say, "Be happy for the customers who complain because at least you know what happened." Because there'll be so many who don't, and at the same time there will be people trying to take advantage. So that's where I think a lot of ML comes into the picture today, particularly in e-commerce, wherein there is, systems have this ability to analyze complaints at scale and see which ones are genuine, see which ones. So that's where you get your return pickups, right? So when a Myntra delivers something and you say, hey, I got a bad product, you are expected to click a picture and, tell them that it is indeed bad. Beyond this, there will be people, even today for that matter, who shop from stores, don't remove the tags, just use H&M's 30-day policy and return it after wearing it. So that those outliers will continue to be there. But at scale, I think automation and using some of these analytics platforms is really what will help. Yeah.
And how do we know that we're focusing on the right, you said ML, so there's obviously data that has to go into that system for me to get answers or me to get insights. So how do I figure out if I'm focusing on the right things?
Actually, this is going to be a more abstract answer. And I think that's how it should be as well. Because unless you focus on the right thing at the systems level, all the operational elements are just subsets, right? For example, I like what Allbirds, the VP of marketing at Allbirds, his name is Himanshu Sinha. He says, because Allbirds is about sustainability. So as a brand, when I think of Allbirds, I think, oh, they make sustainable shoes. That's my first thought. But he says just selling sustainability, I don't think that's a feasible and viable plan or a business plan at all. It's essential. It's in our DNA and we want to do everything right by the planet. But at the end of the day, that's not what we are selling. We are selling shoes and we are selling footwear. We are selling apparel. And we want to make sure that they are the best in quality and performance. So you can clearly see the systems level focus on the right things.
Yeah.
Much as I may love an Allbirds shoe for its sustainability story, and of course, its more recent Adidas partnership, the fact is, unless it's comfortable, I'm not going to come back and buy it a second time.
Yeah. No, I think it takes me back to that Kesi Das Son Papdi, right? Finally,
Yes.
that it has to still taste really good. So
Yeah.
unless you focus on that and you make sure that day in and day out, you remind yourself that, hey, I'm selling sweets or I'm selling shoes, and quality of that product has to be top notch. Everything around it is just a bit of fluff, and you can tell your stories and go on, but
Yeah.
your product has to
Really match up. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Good. That's interesting. So we're getting somewhere now, and I'm thinking, how do I figure this out at different stages in my brand, company, product life cycle, right? Because clearly I need to think about different things at each stage.
Definitely, definitely. So I think at the early stages, especially today, I think no conversation around marketing is not also a conversation about brands, right? Because they do occupy an emotional space. And that's important in a market that's just getting noisier and noisier every day. So I think in the early stages, just focus on your brand perception and what the market is saying about you. At scale, there are social listening tools, there are all of those fancy things, but I think just the simple act of probably managing your own Instagram account for a while or checking it from time to time just to see what kinds of queries are you getting, what kinds of comments are you getting, what are people saying about your ads. That sort of thing is what you should focus on the early stages, because your focus is only on capturing that attention and retaining it for long enough. You're not really thinking about how much of this is going to turn into a sale immediately, right? Then I think at the mid stages, definitely move to sales, because you need early validation that what you're doing is the right thing. And that can only happen when 3 people, 4 people, 10 people buy what you're selling, even for a service, right? And you're delivering it, you've served. And that's how you know that this is a problem area, which I need to fix the next time. For example, my pitching early days, the terms and conditions were very different from the terms and conditions today, because it's only execution that will tell you, what's working and what's not. And likewise, whether people want your service or not. Then I think the late stages, it's really about creating growth and trying to make it as organic as possible, right? So are my promises adding up? Everything I'm saying at different points in time to different people, is it really translating into my product or my service experience? How do I measure that? You have to be in touch with clients. You have to choose your star customers, as we say, run reviews, run surveys, run events, and just make sure that you're actually delivering what you promise. So that is kind of your late stage focus. And I think if we do these 3 things, growth is just a byproduct of running a really good ship.
Yeah, it reminds me of a client that once asked, what's all this digital marketing, social media noise? What happened to just doing what I do really well?
Yeah.
And I think it's still very important, and it's still the crux of running a good business. I don't think anyone can get away with growth, or at least project a growth story, unless what they do is really fundamentally solid.
Yeah, yeah. And the same thing applies to your marketing tenets as well. So are you making growth your marketing priority, or are you actually crystallizing it into something more concrete? Like, what is your growth? Is what I'm trying to say. So for me, growth might mean having a roster of 100 clients. For someone else, growth may mean actually seeing money on the table. And that's what marketing has to work towards in a way.
Correct. So when you say, seeing money on the table, I really wonder, all of these food delivery guys, when will they see that money on the table? Because it's today in the, pursuit of growth, all these promises are being made, right? 15 minutes food, 15 minutes groceries. They're competing crazily with each other it was what Dunzo and Swiggy, then Blinkit, and that went into Zomato. Uber Eats went into Zomato, and now suddenly Amazon and Flipkart want to bring you food in 10 minutes. And at some point, everybody's kind of making you believe that they are growing, trying to make you believe that this category is getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
But, will it really bring money to the table is yet to be seen.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely see a certain amount of consolidation. More acquisitions will continue to happen. This is just the beginning, I think, because at the end of the day, it's a last mile delivery business. Whether you're delivering food or books or grocery or whatever else, medicines, all of those, at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that there are people who can run in cities, like within the city. So yes, we'll see a lot more acquisitions, I think.
And I think that was the slightly interesting bit about Zomato's Goel's kind of defense of his attempt at 15-minute delivery, saying that, hey, I have all the data. I have tons of data. I've delivered lakhs and lakhs of orders, so I know who wants what, when, and from where. So if I can use all this data intelligently, then I know the 10 dishes that I should always have ready for delivery. So when you kind of bring it down to that, then it makes a bit of sense.
Yeah,
That,
logically.
it's doable, and it's not like he's promising you everything on every menu in 10 minutes.
That is true. Yeah, it's not the entire restaurant menu from anywhere in the world that's reaching in 10 minutes. So yeah.
And now it's time for the much awaited Topical.
So today, Hasita, I'm going to get your take on all the words that float around in the world of growth and marketing and just making a business bigger and bigger, or at least sound like it's bigger and bigger.
Sound like it.
So the first term that really caught my attention and made me laugh a bit is growth marketing. Come on, what is that?
Yeah. And I know what you mean, because isn't all marketing growth marketing in a way? So why are we calling it that?
Imagine taking out an ad saying, hey, I've really grown well and I'm good now, and I just want to let you know that I'm good and I'm not looking to add more customers.
I know what you mean. Yeah. In fact, it's so strange because literally the 4 P's of marketing are product, price, place, and promotion.
Yeah.
Right. So promotion is literally the last thing. So unless you have your product, your price, your place, in a way, all of those things are contributing to your growth. So all marketing is growth marketing. That's all I'll say.
Cool. Then comes, we have growth, right? We all know a business must grow. And to me, for a long time, and to most of us, it simply meant that if you have a business, you know what you're doing and that should grow. But apparently, you can have product-led growth. What's that?
Oh, there's an entire Slack community dedicated to discussing product-led growth. And it's quite nice because of how many nuances there are. But to really put it simply in the spirit of Topical, I think let's go back to our Kesidas example. He grew off the back of Son Papdi, man. He has 100 stores in Karnataka at this point. And it all started with maybe 1 or 2 stores, and then neighbors getting to know that the Son Papdi arrives at 4. It's over by 4:10. We all have those bakeries also, no? In the neighborhood, there's one called Lusitania, where you know that 3-4 of his products will get sold out by 4:10 on a Sunday evening, right? So, and have they not grown in a way? They have grown, right? They have opened so many stores and all of them are doing spectacularly well. So that's literally the essence of product-led growth. Make your product so good that you get known for it. And that's what propels your growth.
Makes sense. Everything seems to have the word growth in it. So the next one is growth metrics.
We all like numbers because they mean something, right? They ground us in something solid. And of course, because we also love jargon, there is something called the AAARRR process.
Oh my. Okay, now hit me with it.
You can also call it A3R3 if it's too much. Or R2D2, I don't know at this point. So it basically stands for Awareness, acquisition, activation, revenue, retention, and referral. And honestly, even I had to write that down. So every business is essentially at one of these stages. So you've either launched and therefore you're in the awareness stage, or you're ready to make some revenue. So you're at the mid stage, which is the final stage of growth, which is reference, right? The moment people start referring your product, people who've used it, you know that you're well on the way to good growth. So use that, know that you fall in one of these 6 areas, and then set your metrics. So for awareness, obviously your growth metrics would be different. For retention, they would be different.
Okay, so one last one for you, right? And I'm not talking about any face cream or anything that kind of, promises that it'll take care of your T-zone. I'm talking about T-shaped marketer. Who the heck is that?
Oh man, I don't know why have we made this industry so full of these terms that only we seem to, and sometimes even we don't understand clearly what we are referring to. Oh my God, it's very simple. It basically means that you're really good at one thing, but you also have a lot of other skills. So the one thing that you're good at is the vertical line, and the horizontal line is the table on which all of your other skills rest.
Oh, wow. They just kind of described mankind. You're good at one thing and you know a lot of other things.
Exactly. There's also an E-shaped marketer, by the way.
Oh,
so if you're good
that?
at 3 things, then you become E-shaped. So yeah, it's endless. It's endless.
That was fun. I think there's a lot of nuance actually in growth, right? As much as we may joke about the various words that we use, the metrics that we use, growth is tricky. Growth is definitely scary sometimes, but growth is also, I think, kind of like that, that hope that keeps you going, right? Because if you're in a business, you're in it to make it better, make it larger, serve more people, touch a greater audience. So growth is critical, and it really helps to know what you're shooting for and how to go about it. So I think this was a good discussion on things to think about, and even for me as a business owner.
Yeah. And in many ways, growth is vital, right? It's fundamental to the survival of, pretty much anything, and businesses as well are no exception. It's just that now seems like a good time as any to think about what it really means in our context. I have a friend on LinkedIn who talks a lot about sustainability, and his startup is also centered around that. And he spoke about this concept called survival of the collective. So it was always survival of the fittest. So there's this promise that one person will come out on top. Whereas us now talking about collaborations that are beneficial to the entire value chain, right? So whether that's individuals, whether that's, the planet at large. I think economically, it also ties back to that story of consolidation itself, all the mergers that we're seeing, all the acquisitions that are happening. So who are we really building for at the end of the day? I think that question is in a way the oxygen that growth needs. And I've seen it hold some startup founders in very good stead, even on some of the darkest days.
Awesome. So I hope this inspires our listeners to think about growth and to really, really plan for growth, because that's like you said, that's what keeps us going. That's what makes us want to get up every day.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Sahita.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode about growth. We did have much ado about growth, didn't we? But I think it is a conversation that's worth having, especially in today's times. If you liked today's episode, please rate us and give us a follow on a podcast platform of your choice. And if you are on Apple Podcasts, a review would be nice to have as well. The show notes will have references to all of the examples we've used in the episodes. And if you have any questions at all, please reach out to us on LinkedIn.